Our contribution is to evaluate a range of alternative climate policies, not just focusing on how well they deal with reducing CO2 emissions, but also to focus on how well they deal with the uncertainty that will inevitably unfold over the next 50 to 100 years. The idea that you can pick the optimal policy to reach a particular goal in 2050 and actually be anywhere near the world in 2050 that you thought would be there is rather naive. And so our structure of our research here is really to do the least bad rather than actually to do the most good, because a lot of the alternatives are very, very dangerous alternatives to dealing with climate change. There's a couple of philosophical issues about how you would go about this. One approach is to start from the tops down and to have all countries agree on a particular strategy and then to self-impose it on all countries. The alternative strategy is to start from the bottom up and have a series of national approaches which evolve into a global system where international cooperation across nations sustains the system. My view is that we're trying the first and not succeeding because we're not taking into account national self-interest. Certainly not the national self-interest that will determine the behaviour of future governments in each of these economies. And I think it's much more productive to start at the national level and build up in a cooperative framework, taking into account national characteristics, institutional developments that are very, very different in different countries, different social systems, different customs, etc. So I think philosophically I would argue starting from the nation and going to the global. But there are some important lessons from history that we need to take into account, and in thinking about climate change, I always am drawn to one of the major issues of the last 100 years, and that is the evolution of the international monetary system. We've learned a lot in designing the international monetary system, and we know that since Bretton Woods we've tried a number of systems based on either gold or the US dollar or a single currency. Yet now we've evolved to a system where we have a whole series of national markets, national strategies, all based around pricing money rather than targeting the money supply. And I think the analogy there from climate change is very, very, very important. We will never have a single carbon asset in the world economy, in my view, in the same way that we will never have a common money. Because this carbon asset we're talking about is nothing real. It is actually the promises of a government to a commitment to achieve a particular level of carbon in their economies. And that's really the crux, is we're dealing with a situation of enormous uncertainty, and we're trying to create a system of a common currency when it will never happen. And that is very dangerous because, as we saw with the numerous financial crises, the collapse of the Bretton Woods system, these collapses of international systems can be extremely expensive in financial terms, and here we're talking about something that could be very, very expensive in environmental and ecological terms. So I think it's a very dangerous strategy to do what most economists would like to do, and that is to go to a global market.